Stand in Seville in the early 1500s, and you are not standing at the edge of the world. You are standing at its center. The air is warm and heavy with the smell of tar, citrus peel, olive oil, damp wood, and river mud. Bells ring from towers that dominate the skyline. Clerks move quickly beneath arcades with bundles of parchment tied in cord. Sailors shout over the creak of hulls and the slap of water against stone embankments. Ox carts groan beneath the weight of sealed chests. Everything moves toward the river. Everything arrives from the river. Beyond the bend of the Guadalquivir lies the Atlantic. Beyond the Atlantic lie lands that, for Europeans, have only recently entered their maps and their calculations. In the 1500s, Seville becomes the hinge between continents. This reconstruction is based on surviving records, administrative archives, merchant contracts, tax ledgers, demographic estimates, and architectural remains. What follows reflects documented structures and historical conditions. There is no invented drama here. The scale of events requires none. To understand Seville's rise, begin with geography. Unlike coastal ports directly exposed to the Atlantic, Seville sits inland, nearly 80 kilometers upriver. The Guadalquivir, navigable and broad, provided access to ocean-going vessels of the era, while also offering protection. Ships had to pass controlled points along the river before reaching the city. In a time of piracy, privateering, and European rivalry, this natural defense mattered. By 1492, Castile had completed the long Reconquista with the fall of Granada. That same year, Columbus sailed west under royal sponsorship. When reports of Caribbean islands returned, they did not instantly transform Seville, but the mechanism was already in place. In 1503, the Crown established the Casa de Contratación in Seville. That decision changed the trajectory of the city permanently. The Casa was not merely an office. It was the administrative heart of Spain's Atlantic system. Every ship traveling to or from the Americas had to register there. Cargo was declared and taxed. Passengers were licensed. Pilots were examined. Navigational charts were corrected. Disputes were adjudicated. Revenues were calculated. Seville was not just a port. It was a filter. Trade with the Americas was legally centralized in this single city. No other Spanish port was authorized to conduct direct commerce across the Atlantic. The Crown's reasoning was clear. Concentrate control, maximize taxation, regulate migration, and monitor wealth. From this point forward, Seville became the official gateway to the New World. The early voyages of the late 15th century had been exploratory and uncertain. But by the 1520s and 1530s, the pattern shifted from exploration to extraction. After the conquest of major American empires and the establishment of colonial administrations, resources began to move systematically towards Spain. Silver defined the system. The discovery of immense silver deposits in the Americas, most dramatically at Potosí in the Andes after 1545 and at Zacatecas in Mexico, transformed global economic flows. Ore was extracted using indigenous labor systems imposed by Spanish colonial authorities. It was refined into bullion and transported in stages, over mountain roads, across colonial territories, through Caribbean ports, and finally across the Atlantic in organized fleets. When those fleets returned, they came upriver. The silver entered Seville. It did not remain there permanently. Much of it moved onward to finance wars, repay debts, or purchase foreign goods. But the physical moment of arrival occurred in Seville's warehouses and counting houses. Royal officials assessed the quinto real, the royal fifth tax on precious metals. Assayers verified purity. Merchants recorded shares. Bars stamped with official seals passed through hands that never crossed the ocean. By mid-century, Seville had become one of Europe's largest cities, with population estimates approaching or exceeding 100,000 inhabitants. This growth was not accidental. It was structural. Merchants from Genoa, Flanders, Germany, and other regions established permanent operations in the city. Foreign banking houses extended credit to the Spanish crown. Shipbuilders, rope makers, coopers, sailmakers, carpenters, blacksmiths, and dock laborers clustered near the river in districts such as El Arenal. The riverfront was industrial. Shipyards repaired hulls battered by Atlantic crossings. Rope walks stretched long and straight to twist hemp into cables strong enough to hold masts under ocean winds. Taverns and lodging houses catered to sailors waiting for departure. Customs officials monitored manifests with meticulous attention. Documentation defined the system. The Casa de Contratación maintained the Padrón Real, a master map that incorporated the latest navigational information brought back by returning pilots. Maritime knowledge was treated as state property. Pilots were examined before receiving licenses. Latitude readings, wind patterns, and coastal outlines were corrected and standardized. Seville became a repository of geographic intelligence. Emigration was tightly controlled. Those seeking passage to the Americas required official permission. Licenses were scrutinized. Religious background, moral character, and lineage could be examined. The Inquisition operated in the city, adding another layer of oversight in an era of religious enforcement. Yet despite regulation, smuggling existed. The sheer value of Atlantic trade made leakage inevitable. Silver could be concealed. Goods could be underdeclared. Foreign merchants found indirect pathways into a system that was officially exclusive. Economic expansion altered daily life. American crops such as maize and tobacco gradually entered Iberian markets. Chocolate, once unknown, began appearing among elite circles. Trade goods flowed outward as well: Castilian woolens, wine, olive oil, tools, devotional objects, and printed materials. Seville was both importer and exporter in a growing Atlantic circuit, but prosperity brought vulnerability. Inflation accelerated during the 16th century in what historians later called the price revolution. The influx of silver increased monetary supply across Europe. Prices rose, wages lagged. Those dependent on fixed incomes felt the strain. Archival wage records and market prices reveal a widening gap between earnings and cost of living. At the same time, the Spanish monarchy engaged in prolonged wars across Europe. Military campaigns required funding on a vast scale. Silver financed armies but did not eliminate debt. The Crown declared multiple bankruptcies during the century, disrupting credit networks tied to civilian merchants and international financiers. The wealth that flowed through Seville did not remain evenly distributed. Social hierarchy sharpened. At the top stood major merchant houses and royal officials who managed Atlantic revenue. Beneath them were artisans and smaller traders. Sailors formed a transient but essential population. Enslaved Africans were present in significant numbers. Seville had one of the largest black populations in Spain during this period, connected to Atlantic slave routes. Parish and notarial records document their roles as domestic servants, laborers, craftsmen, and in some cases, freed individuals integrated into guilds. The city was not homogeneous, it was layered. Disease further shaped its trajectory. Seville experienced major plague outbreaks during the 16th century, including devastating epidemics in the 1550s, and again toward the century's end. Mortality records from parishes show sharp spikes in burials during epidemic years. Population density, maritime traffic, and urban crowding facilitated contagion. Trade connected continents, but it also carried pathogens. The river that sustained Seville also imposed limits. The Guadalquivir required constant navigation management. Silting presented recurring challenges. As ship designs evolved and vessels grew larger, maneuvering upriver became more difficult. Storm losses in the Atlantic compounded risk. Entire fleets could vanish in hurricanes. Merchant contracts from Seville include contingency clauses acknowledging the possibility of total loss. Marine insurance developed in response. Notarial archives reveal complex partnerships and risk-sharing agreements. Investors divided cargo shares to mitigate disaster. Insurance contracts specified compensation in case of shipwreck, piracy, or delay. Seville's commercial culture was literate and contractual. This was not an improvised empire. It was administered on paper. By mid-century, silver from the Americas did more than enrich Spain. It integrated Europe into a global economy. From Seville, bullion moved to Antwerp and Genoa to pay debts and purchase goods. After 1571, when Manila became Spain's Pacific link, American silver even reached Asia, flowing into Chinese markets through trans-Pacific trade. Seville stood at one end of that immense chain. The city functioned as a bottleneck. Everything passed through its bureaucratic machinery. Passenger registries, cargo manifests, tax receipts, pilot certifications. Each document recorded a fragment of a continental transformation. Yet structural weaknesses accumulated. Spain's reliance on American silver created financial dependency. When shipments were delayed or lost, fiscal strain intensified. Royal bankruptcies in 1557, 1575, and 1596 disrupted merchant confidence. Credit tightened. Foreign bankers reassessed exposure. Meanwhile, Cadiz, located at the mouth of the Guadalquivir, increasingly handled practical staging for Atlantic fleets. Although Seville retained formal monopoly authority for decades, the geographic advantage that once protected it gradually became a logistical disadvantage as ships grew larger. Still, during the 1500s, Seville remained preeminent. The cathedral towered above crowded streets. The Giralda rose over tiled roofs. The Alcazar complex housed administrative offices. The city's warehouses stored goods from across oceans. Ox carts rolled over stone pavements. Bells marked time for a population living within an expanding world system. The Archivo General de Indias, established later but built from 16th century documentation, preserves the scale of that administration. Ship registries list cargo down to individual crates. Passenger rolls record names, origins, and destinations. Legal disputes detail partnerships and losses. Every voyage generated paper. Seville processed continents through ink and seal. The consequences extended far beyond Iberia. Indigenous labor systems in the Americas underpinned silver extraction. Encomienda and later repartimiento arrangements compelled work in mines and fields. The wealth arriving in Seville reflected exploitation occurring thousands of kilometers away. Although those labor systems operated overseas, their financial results were measured in civilian offices. The city's prosperity depended on distant coercion. By the end of the century, the outlines of Spain's Atlantic empire were fixed. Colonial cities in the Americas expanded. Rival European powers, England, France, and the Dutch Republic, began developing competing Atlantic networks. The monopoly system that elevated Seville would eventually erode under pressure from economic competition and geographic constraint. But in the 1500s, Seville remained the gateway. If you stand today along the Guadalquivir and look toward the old Arenal district, the noise is gone. The hammering of shipyards has faded. The fleets no longer assemble upriver. Yet the street plan endures. The cathedral still dominates the skyline. The river still curves past stone embankments. The transformation that passed through Seville in the 16th century reshaped global history. It connected hemispheres. It redirected wealth. It altered labor systems, trade routes, and financial structures. It integrated Europe, the Americas, Africa, and eventually Asia into a sustained exchange network. Seville did not discover the New World, but for a decisive century, it controlled access to it. Through geography, bureaucracy, and concentrated authority, an inland Andalusian city became the narrow gateway through which continents collided. Its river served as a funnel. Its clerks counted and certified. Its merchants calculated risk. Its officials extracted tax. The empire's wealth moved through its docks. The empire's paperwork accumulated in its offices. The empire's consequences radiated outward. If you would like to continue walking through places where geography and power intersected, where a single city redirected global history, subscribe to the channel. And in the comments, tell us which crossroads of the past we should reconstruct next.